studied, who does Jesus spend the majority of his time with? Think about that. Does he spend all his time trying to become friends with the people that are rich and powerful and in the palaces? Jesus spends his time with fishermen, with tax collectors, with people that really nobody wanted to be around, people that nobody wanted to talk to, nobody wanted to hang out with, nobody ever even wanted to see. Those are the people that Jesus picked out and said, I want to be your friend. I want to get close to you. Scripture tells us that Jesus didn't have a place to lay his head. He understood what the poor were going through. He lived a simple life that was not complicated. That didn't mean that he didn't need anything. It just meant that he didn't need a bunch of stuff. Jesus also resonated with the poor when he said, whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. Jesus understood what they went through. Jesus understood not having much. Yet James, he's noticed that the church already, even back then, started to struggle with showing favoritism to the rich, not the people that Jesus was going toward, was moving toward, was trying to reach out to. So he wrote about it, and he tried to help the church back then figure out their mistake. And yet we still struggle with the same mistake today. We treat the rich like they're special. But it seems like what James is telling us is that, if anything, the poor are the ones that we should be treating a little different, because they're the ones that are actually rich. They're the ones that are rich in faith. The poor are the ones that God has chosen, the ones that he has watched over and taken care of. All throughout the Bible, if you look at the poor, God has always done something to take care of them. There's one story that stands out to me where it talks about the poor being able to glean in the fields. Back then, God always had some way of taking care of the poor. He never let them go without. Matthew chapter 6 talks about how we shouldn't worry about things because God is always taking care of us. He's always taking care of people. Poor people in India, they're poor as we see them. They don't have a lot. They're persecuted for their faith if they live as a Christian. They don't have much of anything, and yet they believe in a God that says he cares about them, he loves them, and he's going to take care of them. And yet there's people in America who think they don't have much, and how could God let me go through this? Makes me think that maybe the poor, as we see them in India, maybe they're a little more rich in faith than we are. Nevertheless, I was watching a Francis Chan sermon online this past week, and if you know Francis Chan, he just resigned from his position at a church in California, and he decided he was going to go on a trip. He went to all these different countries throughout Asia. He went to China, went to India, went to some other places. But in this specific clip, he was talking about his time in India. While he was there, he spoke with some of the different people from India that were known as Christians. See, he went to this conference while he was there where he was asked to speak. And at this conference the year before, he didn't know this when he got there, that many of them were persecuted at the conference. So after the conference is over, he starts asking them, what are some of the stories that you've had to deal with? What have you had to go through? And they start telling him one story after another. And he keeps saying, tell me more, tell me more. And finally, the people from India, they're like, why do you want to know all about what we go through in persecution? And Francis Chan says, you don't realize the church in America is a lot different than the church in India. See, we can all come here if we want to, any day that we want to, and we don't have to worry about being persecuted. We don't have to worry about somebody coming in and beating us because we believe in Jesus. He said, actually in America, it's so different that we have buildings lined up and down our streets where we can choose between multiple places to go. If we don't like what's going on at one church one week, we can go to a different building. If we don't like what's going on there the next week, we can go to a different place again. And as he's explaining the church in America, these people in India start laughing at him. They start laughing at the way that we have church. Because to them, it's so foreign. Francis Chan tells them, he said, I'm sure you guys understand this. We have people in America that are kind of part-time Christians. People that will come to church on Sunday morning, but then they won't really live it the rest of the week. They live as though they're of the world. And the people in India, they don't get it. Why in the world would you declare that you believe in Jesus and you follow him one day and get beaten for it and the next day not live it? Maybe the poor in India have something figured out that we don't. See, Jesus, he knew that the poor were the ones that we should look to because they're rich in faith. And James knew it. And James is trying to reiterate it right here. And yet we still struggle with showing favoritism to the rich. They laugh at the way we do church. That was one thing that just stuck out to me. Francis Chan saying, they laughed at me. When all I did was explain church in America, they laughed at me. We treat Sunday morning like it's whoever has the best show. We treat it like whoever can get me emotionally going, that's where I want to be. Instead of looking at it as, I'm going to get together with a group of people that I worship God with, that I can become accountable with, that can help me learn and grow in my relationship with Christ. It's about a show. I think this is where James understands that the poor are definitely the ones that we need to be looking to. They're really the ones that are richer. They're really the ones that have it right. And maybe us, the ones that think we're rich, have it a little wrong. See, we often look at ourselves in this story as being the group of people that gather together and see the rich one coming in and see the poor one coming in. But with how often we change places where we go now, maybe we should look at ourselves as the rich one coming into the place. See, we are rich. We live in America. Even if you feel like you're not wealthy, you're not making it, don't have enough to get by, you live in America. You make a lot more money than other people in the world. I can't remember the statistic, but when we did the 30-hour famine with a group of youth, I don't remember how many people lived on less than $2 a day. $2. We make more than $2 a day. We can make more than $2 a day just by going and sitting outside. People would just give us things. We are rich no matter who we are in America. And yet, we still look at this story, and we could see ourselves as the church gathered together looking at the rich and not even notice that we are him. I don't care how much you think that you're not the rich person. You could be. The poor people in India, they read the Bible, they see persecution, they know that it's going to come, and yet we're the rich that think we deserve different, that we almost expect to be treated different. And then on top of that, we come into a place where we can gather and we can have a roof over our head. We can have one screen, thanks to some people that put up plenty of effort this morning, have music, have microphones, have lights, have air conditioning, have all this stuff. And people in India just get together to worship. And we don't think we're rich. I was helping with VBS a couple weeks ago. Scott and I had a class, the 5th and 6th graders, and I saw kids that came into this building every day excited about church. Every day they were so happy. They were running around in this place. The lights were all turned off, and there were laser lights and fog machines and light machines going, music playing. They were excited about being here. And then on Sunday morning, it kind of worried me. If any of those kids came back from VBS to come to church on Sunday morning, would they really be that excited with all of us around? Really? Are we excited to be here on Sunday morning? Sometimes it doesn't seem like it. Sometimes it seems like we'd rather be doing something else. We'd rather be playing golf, or we'd rather be going to get our nails done. If you're a girl, I don't get my nails done. So sometimes it seems like we'd rather be doing something else. But I'll tell you what, last week when we were in that VBS, Scott, he came up with, and maybe he's already done this for a long time, I don't know. He came up with this thing called the octagon. Right outside here at the Welcome Center, it was moved. There's a spot in the carpet where it makes the shape of an octagon. And he'd have the kids come, and we'd sit around that octagon every day. And first, Scott would come up with a question, then the kids started coming up with questions. On the day where the theme was forgiveness, Scott asked, have you ever forgiven anyone, or have you ever been forgiven?